So welcome. So this is 10 Ways to 100K for members of Dreamers and Doers, presented by me. Who am I? My name is Lauren Burke. I always think it's really important to take a moment to talk about identity and equity before I do any presentation. I am a white woman. I am a young white woman. I'm a young white woman who is born into middle class. Obviously, that makes fundraising easier for me than it makes for other people because I have privileges when I walk into a room and people have certain assumptions about me when I walk into a room. I just want to make sure that I'm real about that, right? Because it's important that we recognize power dynamics and identities when we're doing this work so that we can uplift other people even more. And we'll talk about a little bit more doing that later on, but just wanted to take a moment to do a privilege check. I founded an organization called Atlas DIY, which was for undocumented immigrant youth. I started working on it in 2010, got incorporated 2011, 2014, sorry, people are like singing me, and I don't know how to do it, but I'm just going to ignore it. 2014, we hired our full-time staff, and from 2014 to 2016, I actually raised over $2 million in charitable funds from grants, from individuals, from all of that. So when I founded a nonprofit, I really thought that I was going to love managing people and hate fundraising. It was the total opposite. So I now do fundraising consulting with the Possible Lab to teach people how to do this. Briefly, I spent most of 2017 living in a van doing free legal services around the country in rural and resource-poor areas of the United States. And I'm also working on a for-profit startup. So if anybody does do a for-profit fundraising workshop, I will need to be on that call. Okay, let's get started. I want to give you all some quick stats on giving. So individuals make up more than 70% of the $410 billion given to charitable causes in 2017. Now that's a huge, huge amount. When we think about fundraising, often we think about grants, writing proposals to get money from people, but actually most of the dollars lay within people with either big pockets or tons of people with smaller pockets. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is how do you capture and catch people so that you can do the money. We're going to talk about grants and things too, though. So to break it up more, individuals, 72%, foundations, 15%, bequests, which is if you die, you leave it in your will, 8%, and corporations, 5%. Okay. Who are the givers? So 69% of the overall population in the United States gives. That's great. That means if you have 10 friends, 7 of them should be giving you money. And we're going to talk about how you can get them to give you money. 91% of HINWI households give to charity. Lauren, what's HINWI? HINWI stands for high net worth individual. So rich people, basically. We call them HINWIs in the fundraising world. 64% of donors are women. Not surprising because we rock and rule the world and can't wait till we just take over everything. And the average individual gives to 4.5 nonprofits. So if you have a friend that says, oh, I already give to one, tell them that unless they are giving to 4 others, they are below the national average. So no excuses to not give you money. So let's get the money. Yay. Oh, the GIF isn't raining. Oh, well, it's a GIF that is raining money. Okay. So we're going to talk about 3 different parts today. The first part is get to the people. I hope also, am I talking too fast? Give me a thumbs up if I'm talking at an okay speed. Great. I can only see 5 of you. Okay, good. So get the people. Hopefully you all know what this image is from. If not, I'm sorry, but it is from Hamilton, the musical. And it's a great musical. Obviously, everybody should see it if you can. If you're you've probably seen it if you're rich, but you're probably not on this call if you're super rich. But there's a great line about being in the room where it happens. So really what the whole first part of this is going to be about is how do you get people into your room where your fundraising, your magic, your work happens so that they'll give you money. Okay, step 1. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why it says click to add text. Know your worth. This is the most important thing. So know your worth is about getting your pitch down and getting your pitch down perfect. There are 4 main things that you want to make sure that you have down, and if anybody asks you, you can answer it in 2 minutes. Why this cause? So that means just there's so many things people should be giving to, right? There's immigration crisis. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Why does your cause matter, and why should they care about it? Why the work? Why is the way that you're approaching this the way to get it done? Why is the way you're looking at it special? So when I started Atlas DIY, there were a lot of other organizations doing immigration work. And so we already had people convinced that they should give to immigration, but they weren't necessarily convinced why they should give to our organization when there were tons of others doing the same thing. So we did a lot of talking and thinking about how we have a cooperative model, how we are youth-led and youth-run, how we are one of the only spaces in New York City that is, the assumption is everybody's undocumented. So we don't ask for any sort of ID, social security number, all of that. Sometimes when you're talking about why the work, you have to talk about your competitors and talk about why you're better or why you're different, but really you want to keep the focus on this about why your work is the best possible work that can be done addressing the cause. Why you? So good and bad, unfortunately and fortunately, people are going to want to know, why are you the one who should be doing this? If they're giving to a cause, why are you the one to lead it up? Now, this can cause problems down the road, such as founder syndrome. But for me, I really was selling myself a lot of the time and saying why I should care, why people should care about giving money to me individually. And it's a lot of hustling. It's a lot of making yourself seem amazing and wonderful and great and pitching yourself as a person too. And then why now? Why is it immediate? Why, when there's so many other things going on, should they care right now? So the main thing that you want to learn, the tick to do this, is mastering the pivot. So you should be able to, in any room, in any context, tie any conversation that you're having to your organization. When I do board trainings, I actually make them go through these questions. So I say, like, if you're we talk about an elevator pitch, but it's not like you're going to be in an elevator with somebody and they're going to be like, hey, give me your pitch about an organization. So you have to think about when you're meeting somebody at a cocktail party, you're waiting in line for coffee, when you're going to the Dreamers and Doers event tonight, how can you get them to think about your organization and care? The first step is you want to always see where they're at. You always want to tie what you're doing into whatever they talk about. So literally, I was giving this workshop and I did a thing where I had people stand up and they said, how are you today? And I said, oh, I'm a little bummed because it's raining outside. Or I'm really happy because I got a new puppy. And the people would actually have to then tie their work into what I was talking about. So I was working with a young woman whose name is Ruth. She started an organization called Ask Without Shame, which provides text messaging answers to young people in Uganda and around the world about sex and sexual health. And so I did this with Ruth, and she was standing up, and I said, oh, I'm bummed, it's raining outside. And she was like, oh, I'm bummed too. I don't like the rain. But you know what's so interesting? When I think about rain, I think about rain jackets and rain slickers. And that's actually what we call condoms in Uganda. I don't know if you guys call them this in America, and started a whole conversation about it. The same thing. I was like, oh, I'm really happy I got a new puppy. She was like, oh my gosh, I love dogs. I've always wanted one, but I can't get one right now because I'm busy starting this new nonprofit that I want to tell you about. Obviously, that's like extreme examples, but really doing these sorts of like silly practicing with your friends, with your board, can be amazing because you can just learn how to bring things up into conversation and make it natural. So that's how to get somebody that's not in the door yet. If somebody's in the door and you're engaged and they're talking to you, you want to ask them about what they care about these days. What are they interested in? What social issues are important? So I'll say again, like, so what are you interested in? And they might say something like, I care about education. Or they might say, you know, I was on the subway and people are just too caught up in their screens. Again, you want to, whatever the organization is that you're doing, you want to address what their issue is. So for Atlas, for example, we had educational programs, so that was easier. We had a college access program. We had after school tutoring, but we're too caught up in our screens. Everybody take a moment to think, how would you relate that? Okay. So we said, well, at Atlas, we actually create a safe space where young people can come in and interact with one another. A lot of young undocumented people actually meet online because it's a confidential area, and we invite them to come in and meet together in a place where they don't have to be afraid. So think about that. Think about how you can pitch anything to what you're doing. And then the last thing is they might say, okay, but I only have $10. How will that help you? And that brings us to the next slide. Oh, but before I go to the next slide, Hannah, do we have any questions on this slide? Great. 2, build a budget. Okay, when I'm building a budget, I always like using a 3 budget approach. Most people will say, just have your budget and use that and send it out. I think that this actually isn't the best approach because sometimes it's too intimidating to people and sometimes it's too little, so you're leaving money off the table. So I kind of take it as a Goldilocks approach. So this one is too small, this one is too big, this one's just right. But I think about it as a basic budget, a comfort budget, and a dream budget. So how that basically works is if they're saying, okay, I'm giving out a $10,000 grant, where would that plug in? Show me your budget. I would actually send them 3 budgets and I'd say, this is the bare minimum. This is the basic of what we need to succeed this year. Now, what we're hoping for this year is this amount of money, because with that, we can add X, Y, Z onto it. And in a dream world, in a dream scenario, this is the amount of money we would need to just knock it out of the park. The reason you do this is because if people only have a small amount to give, they don't feel like they're not going to help your organization at all. But you also will be able to keep building upon what you're doing to get them really excited to hopefully give you more. This also allows you to pivot your pitch based upon the amount that they say that they're able to give. So you want to practice. You want to think about what would your org be able to do with $10? What about $100? What about $1,000? $10,000? $100,000? $1 million? We literally would say, wow, in a dream world, we would love to purchase property in Sunset Park because it's a rapidly gentrifying area, and we want to make sure that it stays within the community. Now, I know that that's a wild, crazy idea. So even just $10 will make sure that a homeless young person can have a Metro card to come to their legal appointments. So we would love your contribution at any level. Obviously, if you're talking to, your friend, you're not going to necessarily bring up the $1 million, but it's really great to, again, be able to tell them all the different things that could happen to have them plug in. When you're talking about what specific amount of money you're asking for, it should be tangible. That means that they should understand how that dollar is going to change somebody's life. You don't want to say, oh, it will help you don't want to say $1,000 would allow us to do after school tutoring. You want to say $1,000 will pay one of our college students a livable wage so they can actually come in after school and teach another young person what they know. They should be touchable. Touchable means that it's accessible. One of the things that I've seen that's problematic is people get really jargony, which is great if you're talking to an immigration lawyer. Then I'd say, oh, $10,000 will ensure that my client can get a U visa and later on adjust their status. Most people won't know what it is. So instead, I'll say $10,000 will allow me to provide an attorney to a young person so that they can get immigration status and move from undocumented to being able to be recognized as a full member in United States society. The last thing is it should be teachable. By teachable, I mean that they should feel like they're walking away, learning about what's going on in their communities and how they can help. You don't want them to walk away being like, oh, that sucked, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, and I don't really get it. You want them to walk away being like, wow, this person, Lauren or Vanessa or Hannah, whoever you're talking to, is an expert. And so by supporting them, I'm also going to learn a lot about what's going on. Hannah, any questions about step 2? Great, we'll keep zipping along. Speed is going okay for everybody? Great. Okay, step 3, build a board. Boards are so important, and they are something that I know I did not utilize effectively at the beginning of Atlas DIY, and I've now learned a lot, and I actually do a ton of board coaching, and I really love it. So the reason a lot of us in the boards, when we're starting, my first board was a former client, my ex-boyfriend, a friend. Well, he wasn't my ex at the time, so maybe don't put a partner on your board. We can talk about that offline. but just random people I knew, and I was like, please join my board, because you have to show that you have board members to get incorporated in a 501c3 organization. That's fine at the beginning, but eventually you really do want to graduate or start incorporating a board that is working for you and that is working for your organization. I have this thing blinking saying more. Okay, it's just things happening in chat. Okay, but Hannah will tell me if I need to see that. Okay, so as you graduate to a board that's going to be working for you, you always want to think about the 3 T's. The 3 T's are time, treasure, talent. They either have time to give to your organization doing, I don't want to say low skill, but non-degree required things such as stuffing envelopes, selling raffle tickets, or they have to have treasure. We know what that means. They're writing you checks. Or they have to have talent, meaning they're a lawyer, so they're going to do your free legal services. They are an accountant, so they're going to be giving to that. So you really want to be strategic about board members, and ideally every single one of your board members should have 2 of the 3 T's, time, treasure, talent. You want them to have 2 of them in order for them to be really useful board members. I like to go by the 10% rule, which means that your board should be responsible for raising 10% of your organization's funds. That means if you're a $100,000 organization, your board should raise $10,000 of that. If you are a $10,000 organization, your board should be raising $1,000. You want to make sure that the fundraising component is there early on and they feel excited to do that. One of the biggest, well, I'm going to skip to the next thing. Great resources are a document called Board Coach and Board Source. I should have said this at the beginning, and hopefully you all had access, but if not, I can give you access to a document I've created called the Possible Labs Ultimate Fundraising Guide, and it has more than 75 links on it to all the things I'm going to talk about, tools, templates, resources. It's from my past 10 years in the social sector, so all those links are there. It's a juicy, wonderful document, I think, but I made it, so I'm biased. Okay, how do you get to building a board that size? Whoops, that's great and awesome like this. Oh, okay, all right. So there are 3 documents that you want to make sure that you're creating to get board success. And I put at the bottom, stop groveling and start greenlighting. Again, a lot of times we're just super grateful that people are on our boards, they're helping us out, that we're sort of putting ourselves in a bad hierarchy where we're grateful if they're doing anything. How do we reposition that? Well, the first thing is that we want to create a board application. You want people, you can probably think in yourself, like, when you haven't had to apply for something or you haven't had to take any steps to be incorporated into something, you're probably not paying as much attention to it. You're not putting as much value into it. So a board application ensures that people are already stepping up, they're showing they want to take the time. And this also allows you to see if their values align with you and if they've actually thought about this. People are scared about board applications because they're like, I don't want to turn anybody away. People won't fill out an application, but you don't want those people on your board because they're not going to show up the way for you. I actually have worked with organizations that put out Facebook and LinkedIn ads to join their board, because a lot of times we're only reaching our network when there's a lot more people we can reach, especially after the election. More people are thinking about how they can get engaged. And if you pitch it the right way, boards can really be a way where they make a huge impact. The second thing is, once you have your board, you want to create a board pledge. And there's a sample board pledge in my juicy fundraising, all that thing doc. And in fact, if you guys want it, I can give you a sample board application too. A board pledge is something that all the board members sign together saying, we are taking on this responsibility and we are going to do the following. In that board pledge, you want to have a minimum give-get. That means that you want board members to state officially, I will either raise or personally donate X amount of dollars. Now, obviously, you don't want to just say, here's the board pledge, you have to give 10,000. You want the board to feel like they are part of this process of deciding what makes the most sense, but actually have them sign it and pledge to it and have a real physical copy saying they'll do it. And then the last thing is a board report card. So the board report card is something that you have at the end of the year that basically, it can just be as simple as going through the pledge. There are tools and templates of board report cards in the document. But this is where you can sit down with your board members and say like, hey, how do you think you did this year as a board member? We signed on to these pledges. What can I do to help you succeed even more next year? A lot of board members don't really know what they're doing, which is fine. Again, like when I started Atlas, I had no idea what I was doing. Kind of all of life is making it up as we go along. But the more tools you can give board members, the better, because then it's really based on how can I support you and not just you didn't do that. Hannah, any questions about boards? Great. I told you guys that this would be fast and efficient. That's how I like to work. Okay, I need to get a sip of water. Great.
We have a question.
Great. Yes, question.
How many board members are ideal?
Great question. When I first started Atlas, at the beginning, we only had four board members. Most executive directors do give themselves a board seat, which I highly recommend doing because then you're in the room and you're like an equal with the board. So at the beginning, you want to keep it small because you really do want to have control so that you're setting the values, the culture of the organization. As you expand and you've really laid that foundation down, I think that a good board number is between 8 and 12. You want to have at least 8 because more people means more money if you give them the training and it's a good fundraising board. And if you're picking the right people, that's 8 people who are either giving their time, treasure, or talent, not just their opinions, right? A lot of people think bigger board means, oh my God, it's just people giving opinions. But that's why you want to make people affirmatively have to say what they're going to do. So they're actually doing work. Anything beyond 12 kind of gets a little unruly. So I wouldn't suggest doing that. But what you can do is you can create different boards. So some people have their main board, which is their governing fundraising board. That's what we've been talking about. You can also have an advisory board. An advisory board oftentimes is really fancy people we put on our website to give us legitimacy, but they might not actually be doing anything. So for example, if you're doing racial justice work, Brian Stevenson is the god of that. If you haven't seen Brian Stevenson's TED Talk, you need to watch it. It's amazing. I'll put it in the chat. It's called What We Need to Talk About When We Talk About Injustice. Anyways, you might try to get Brian Stevenson and list him as an advisor, which everybody's gonna be like, wow, Brian Stevenson signed off on us. He believes in this organization, but they don't actually have to do anything. A third board that you can create is a junior board or a young professionals board. And this might be people who are newly minted, maybe they just graduated from law school or they just graduated from undergraduate, and they're going to be the ones, they have a smaller pledge, a smaller give get, and you're going to be like, you know what, every single month I want you guys to throw a bomb ass happy hour, and give them a way to like wade their feet into board membership, and think of creative events that they can do, but not have to take on all the full responsibilities that they might not be there yet for. I was going to say something else. A note also about equity. I think it's so important that you actually also put your constituents on the board. So incredibly important and necessary. So Atlas, half of our board was actually made up of undocumented young people over the age of 18. You have to be at least 18 to serve on a 501c3 board. And that made a huge difference, I think, also to our funders and also just to walk the walk and not just talking the talk. We worked with the board then to talk about what their give get would be and be creative. So they didn't have a ton of money, but when we did site visits, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the young people were the ones giving the tours. They were the ones talking to donors. So we said, all right, if you are a part of that process and we then get that check, that's your give get. So being really creative about how you can make your board equitable, so that you can bring in the people that you're working with, because that's truly who you should be working for. And there's a great quote by Glenn Martin, who was previously the head of Just Leadership USA that does incarceration work. And it was, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And so you want those people on your board also. Any other questions, Hannah?
Yeah, will the sample board application be in the resources document?
It's not yet, but I will put it there for you guys.
Perfect.
Writing it down in my notes. If I don't do it, Hannah will remind me. Okay, any others about boards? Okay, 23 minutes to go. Let's do it. Okay, ask for advice. I'm gonna whip through this really quickly, but there's an old saying, ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money. The reason you wanna ask people for advice is because you wanna position them as experts, And you want to get them really excited about your cause. And people are going to get more excited when you say to them, trying to think of an example. Oh, okay. So opera, yay, Rebecca. So opera. So I work with a company that does opera. They're called Heartbeat Opera Company. They're like, do new, cool, innovative opera. I do their auction calling every year at their drag extravaganza. And we talked about how they can really, you know, talk to people who are well-known philanthropists in the arts and say, for example, hey, so-and-so, I saw that you helped sponsor this gala in Philadelphia. Now, they're probably thinking that you're going to say, will you sponsor our gala? No, no, no. Instead, what you say, we are really thinking about doing a gala, and I'd love to hear what some of the top tips you had from that experience, because I know it was amazing, and I'm sure we have a lot to learn from you. That person now, instead of just being asked for their wallet, is being asked for their ideas and advice. And while they're teaching you, you can be like, oh, that's such a great idea. I'm going to implement it, which then hopefully will make them want to see you succeed. So that's great. Asking people to lunch is huge. Sort of saying, if they're interested, if you've done your elevator talk, if they're saying, and they'll be like, I'd love to learn more, saying, I'd love to take you out to lunch sometime to tell you more about my organization and hear what you're excited about. Always have to be listening. Ask people, again, what they're interested in. Don't just give them a spiel. Say, why did you want to meet with me today? Why are you interested in music? Why are you interested in virtual reality? All of that. And the important thing at the end is you actually make the ask. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, this is also where we get into resource management. You have a finite amount of time. And this is just the reality. You don't want to spend every single day going to lunches with people that might only be able to write you a $20 check. That's kind of sucky, but it's the reality, right? You have to be protective of your time and what you can do. And at the end of the day, the more money you can get, the better work that you're able to do for your organization. So you want to make sure that you have the right people in the room to be having those lunches with, to be thinking about it. So how do we make the ask? Oh, wait, I thought I had this. Oh, well, we're going to talk about that more in a moment. Hopefully you watch Parks and Rec. But before that, one great type of way to ask people for advice, not money, where you can knock things out in a period of time, is a Jeffersonian dinner. Pause. This is the worst name ever. Jefferson was horrible. This is what it's called in the fundraising world. This is what the links are called. Let's work on changing it and calling it something else. Maybe we'll call it the Dreamers and Doers dinner moving forward. So Jeffersonian dinner, and there's a link on how to run this in the links, is a salon type setting where you ask folks for advice as a way to get them invested in your organization. You want to put on a really nice dinner, maybe on somebody's, I did it when we started Atlas, it was on my friend's balcony in Williamsburg, overlooking the city. I had another ex-boyfriend. So much of what I've done is based on ex-boyfriends. So if you're single, I advise you to like date around because then they owe you. Anyways, I had another ex-boyfriend who was a chef, and so he cooked a 3-course meal for us. And I reached out to people who I knew were donors in areas, and I said, Atlas is running into, I don't remember what the question is that we did. Sorry. Okay. But it can be anything. So for example, Atlas, we are doing a great job getting young people from Brooklyn to come to our office, but we really want to reach out more to Manhattan. I know that you work with and help organizations who are in Manhattan, so I'm throwing a really wonderful dinner party. It's free. Please come so you can help us achieve this goal. What this dinner party actually is a 2-hour pitch about your organization and how amazing it is. When you're asking people advice, and it really is too, it's not like you're asking people advice in a fake way, right? You've done your research, you know who they are. But this is a really great way to get them all in the same room, to get everybody excited, to have them be invested, because if you're implementing their ideas, they're going to want to see it succeed. And to just make them feel like, wow, I'm being given this great dinner by the people I'm going to write them a check later. So it's the right people for a real purpose and give them a reason to give. So right people who get actually write checks, real purpose. You want to have a tangible goal that they're helping you figure out and give them a reason to give. You want to get them excited. Now, I'm going back to this. Okay, so we're going to talk about making the ask now. just part two. We have 18 minutes, so I'm going to go as fast as I can. Okay. Because a lot of people will do all of this and then they'll say, thanks for lunch. And then they leave and they're like, oh, I took them to lunch. I had a Jeffersonian dinner. Why didn't they write me a check? Often because you didn't make the ask. Hopefully you watch Parks and Recreation and have seen Mona Lisa saying money, please. Parks and Recreation is the best show ever. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Okay. So how do we make the ask? We're going to talk now about a few different ways to make the ask. But what you really want to be listening for in all those individual conversations is people saying, so what do you need? And that opens the door to saying, with $10 we did this, $100 we did this, $1,000 we did this, all of that. But you always want to make it. At the end of a Jeffersonian dinner, for example, you can say, wow, thank you all so much. This has been amazing. I'd love to stay in touch with you all to make sure that you can help us succeed and to hear what you're interested in giving. You'll get all their email addresses, then send out an email later on saying, we have this opportunity to join the board. We have this opportunity for this. And we'd love a financial donation from you in any amount. Here's what all these things will do. Make sure you make the ask. Anybody who says, so what do you need? That's when you say, money, please. Okay. So here are 4 things to actually tangibly do. Write a grant. So grants, even though they make up a smaller percentage than we think, can be an amazing way to get huge chunks of money. You can get multi-year grants who will last a long period of time. Grantwatch.com, which is in my documents, is an amazing resource. You can also do grant sourcing from looking at nonprofits who are similar and looking at who all their donors are and then sort of reverse engineering, seeing what they can do. A lot of people, I think, make the mistake at the beginning of hiring a grant writer. And the reason I don't think that's the best thing to do at the beginning is you know your organization, you know your work, you know why, how, who, and when. And practicing writing a grant or a pitch deck or anything like that is going to get you forcing yourself to think about concise language to sell it. And so maybe hire a grant sourcer, which is somebody who can search for the grants, create an Excel spreadsheet that says, this is when it's due, these are the requirements, this is who else gotten it. So that is an easy part. We paid a college student like $15 an hour to do that for us while we were at Atlas, and it was helpful because then I wasn't wasting time looking for grants. But once we'd identified them, I was the one doing the writing until we were past a $500,000 level. Now that's a very high level and I just like writing and I'm an attorney by trade. So that's a thing, but you want to do it at the beginning. Story banking. Story banking is a really great way to create narratives for your grants. For every single grant, almost every single question, we would include a tangible story or a quote from a young person. And so we created a Google form that our staff, if they had a great interaction with a young person wrote them an email or something, we would put it into the Google form and have it in our story bank, obviously with young person's permission. So then if I was writing a grant that was about education, I could just search my story bank, pull up education, and right there I'd have a story and a quote. It's a lot easier to have them on hand beforehand as it's happening, rather than waiting until the end. We already talked about differentiating yourself. Elevate your people, include your people in your grant writing process. If you're starting a new grant, bring in your constituents and say, hey, we have this opportunity to write a grant for $100,000. Can we have a brainstorming session about what you guys would want to see if we got this money? Then talk about how you engage them at the end, because it makes you seem different than anybody. And if you're not working with people, then you can also talk about how you are invested in getting the perspective of artists who are not already who often aren't uplifted in these areas. So always talk about how you're pushing the envelope forward and always educate them. A lot of times donors are people that care but don't necessarily know. We already talked about that teaching. Okay. Step 6, get a sponsor. I'm going to whip through this kind of quickly because corporations actually give much smaller than we think. But 37% of millennials say they are more likely to buy something because it's associated with a certain cause. I was talking to my friend this past weekend who runs a legal institute in Charleston, and we were drinking beer that somebody brought because it's called, something called like beer, lot of the people, and then it says something like mass justice. And there was a beer called pro bono something. and yet they're not affiliated with any organization. So I help them draft a letter, and we'll see how it goes, saying like, I see that you have this thing. It seems aligned with my thing. Will you sponsor us? You can do this easily, asking people for auction items, all the different things. On the Google Doc, there is a search engine where you can search for local organizations that will give items to you. You can also reach out to corporate sponsors. When you reach out to them, though, you want to talk about who they will reach if they partner with you, because really all they care about is the optics. So this is where, if you have a good social media following, can be really helpful, because you'll say, you know, if you will become a sponsor for our gala, or if you'll sponsor after school program, or if you'll sponsor the curation of this upcoming opera, we will tweet it out to our 5,000 followers, 10,000 followers, that sort of thing. Come up with ideas for them. Let them be lazy. If you're like, we'd love to partner with you, womp womp. But if you're like, I have all these ideas about how we could partner, I'd love to hear what excites you, then you help do their work for them and you're in control. Okay, 10 minutes. Oh, Hannah, I haven't been asking if there are questions. I'm good, great. Throw a gala. People are like, I'm gonna throw a gala, we'll raise all this money. Make sure first that you're gonna make a profit. If you don't have, so say the gala is gonna cost you $5,000. If you don't have 10 people that you know will buy a $500 ticket, or 100 people that will buy a $50 ticket, don't throw the gala, because you're not even going to break even. So you want to make sure you have the people in the room before you do it. You want to focus on your Hinwees. You want to have lots and lots of ways to make the ask during the gala. So I actually MC some charity galas, which is mainly super fun because I get to rent really gorgeous gowns from Rent the Runway. But you want to do things like Fund a Need. Fund a Need is, and these are tons of links in the document. Fund a Need is a way at the end where you say, this is how much money we raised tonight. We want to raise $10,000 more to purchase this, this musical library from this institution, whatever. Let's get there. And you're going to say, who loved tonight? Who drank food and had a fun, who ate food, who drank and had a fun time? Who is excited about our mission? All right, let's going to do this. We're going to raise $10,000 in 5 minutes. And then you'll say, everybody, for $20, we can do this. Who's going to give 20 more? They raise their hands. It's a really fun thing to do. That's what I've done with other organizations, which is really great. You can also get really creative. Here, you can, when we're doing auctions, a lot of times people think I don't have things to sell, but you can have services to sell. So for example, dreamers and doers, we all give a lot of offers. So maybe put an ask, like, I have this gala coming up. Are you a coach? Do you run this service? And you'd be willing to offer a free session in our live or silent auction. Also, galas don't have to be your typical fancy dressed up thing. At the beginning of Atlas, we had events, we had a tag sale. I literally drove around New York with a truck, well, sort of a car, with my then boyfriend, now ex. And I asked all my friends, like, do you have nice clothes, furniture, anything that you want to get rid of? We drove around, we collected it all. We set it up on the street where I was living in the West Village, where I was nannying with a family. And we raised $3,000 doing like this tag sale, which was crazy. I also do something called Speed Date for a Cause, which is great because it's free. And you run a speed dating event, and you can charge people like $50, and that's free for you to run. You just get a rented space and they buy tickets. So be really creative about the types of things you can do. One thing I want to mention for galas is something called a paddle party. There's an explanation of this in the document, but a paddle party, I think, is an amazing way to raise money. Basically, you auction off seats at an exclusive event and it can maximize your money. So sometimes people will say like, oh, we're going to auction off. Okay, we just did it with another arts company I was working with called Old Sound Room. They got this fancy, sustainable sushi chef that they know. So they're like, sometimes people would say, we're going to auction off a dinner party with this fancy sous chef, with one of our performers, for you and 10 of your friends. Now that might go for, I don't know, $5,000, $500. When I started Atlas, we were making hundreds of dollars. So if I'm talking big numbers and you're like, don't worry, I've so been there. So that might get a certain amount of money. If you pitch it, however, saying, we have this amazing event, it's going to be once in a lifetime, yada, yada, yada. We have 10 seats. And you know what? We're selling those 10 seats for just $20 each, or whatever level it is. Who wants to come? Everybody's going to raise their hand, right? So then you say, but we only have 10 seats. So now the price of each seat is $50. And it goes up like that. If it's confusing, you can look at the video, but it worked amazingly. I did it again for Heartbeat Opera, and they, one of their board members had a fancy penthouse. They got like wine and cheese donated from Murray's, and then they were going to have like their opera singers do a private concert. We sold 10 tickets, each for $750, so $7,500, which was pretty amazing. And in fact, we probably could have pushed it a little bit more, but it was our first time doing it. So it was my first time doing it. So I was like, but that can be a really great way to raise a lot of money. Okay, 7 minutes. Let's whip through it. What else do we got? Run an online campaign. Okay. Online campaigns. Everybody's like, I'm just going to do an online campaign and everybody will give. Wrong. You have to have the people in the room, right? You want to have a really tight timeline. People will be like, I'll have a month-long campaign. Then you're just stressing out for a month. If you see something and you have a month to donate, you're probably not going to do it because you'll forget about it. You'll wait till the last minute. You have to bug people the whole month long, and it's a pain in the ass. So I actually really like a tight timeline for specific need, which we've talked about, with fun thank yous and prepare. My favorite way to go about an online campaign is a 10 by 10 by 10 campaign. A 10 by 10 by 10 campaign is you find 10 people who will ask 10 friends for $10. You do your math quickly, which I can't do, but I've done it in the past, it's $1,000. So if I find 10 people who ask 10 friends for $10, that's $1,000. So if you and a friend can do this, it's $2,000. $10 is a really, really easy ask. And so it's a great accessible way to do a lot of grassroots fundraising, get people in early on. But what's important is you actually have to ask these 10 specific individuals. So I've done this in the past on Giving Tuesday, which is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. There's Black Friday, there's Cyber Monday, now there's Giving Tuesday. And so I'll actually put on Facebook, I'm asking 10 friends for $10, and I'm gonna tag 10 people who I know care about this issue. Once there's that accountability and somebody's asking you to do it and you're tagged, you kind of have to do it. It's like the ice bucket challenge, but you're not asking them for so much money that they think you're an asshole. So this is a great way to do it. If you're interested in 10 by 10 by 10, I'm actually starting a Giving Tuesday coaching group that starts after Labor Day, where we're getting a group of people together every single week. I'm going to walk you through how to do this specifically. But again, there are lots of resources online too. 10 by 10 by 10. Okay, last part, engage. Oh, hi there. Most people forget, I'm going to skip to this one. I should have done it things. Most people forget to continue on with their donors. They got the dollar, they're done. The donor retention rate in 2015 to 2016 was only 45%. That means that if you had 100 people donate one year, only 45 donate the next year. That's crazy. If you've done any kind of sales, you know it's much more expensive to get a new customer than to retain an old one. So same as in sales. So you want to make sure that you're continuing to engage people and not just asking them for money. We would throw events that people could just come to for free, where maybe they'd have open mics and they could hear our young people perform. We would make sure we would do these really neat things where we had thank you cards, where they were designed by the young people. They took the pictures, which was really great. And when they were sitting around the office, they would sign them. So you're actually seeing, wow, I see 20 specific signatures from individuals. And we would just send these at different times of the year. For our big donors, we would actually have young people, again, who wanted to, who were trained, who were interested in maybe doing philanthropy or sales or whatever moving forward. You don't just want to exploit your people. But we'd have them call them on the phone and just say like, hey, I know that you supported this program and I just wanted to say thank you for that because here's how it helped me and impacted me. People don't get phone calls these days, so probably they're not going to pick up, and all you have to do is leave a message, but then it will have a huge impact. We also would create, whenever we did a program for our high donors, we would create these thank you books, where we'd actually, it cost maybe $20 via Vistaprint or whatever, and we'd actually print out specifically what happened, what the program was. We had pictures, that sort of thing. And the cool thing was a lot of our foundational donors would actually display them in their offices, which gave us free press, which we hadn't even thought about. The last thing, is speaking your truth. This is really powerful. You want to talk honestly about where you're at. we're so often sort of made to seem like we have all of our shit together and we're so amazing. But then sometimes people are like, but then you don't really need my money. So I would say like, we're doing all this amazing stuff, but then I would say, but we're actually doing that on a budget of only $80,000. Or we have an attorney on staff and she's amazing, but we're not able to pay her market rate. And so I have to start thinking quickly about how I can raise enough money to keep her on board because she's doing amazing for our young people. You're allowing people to then partner with you and not just thinking like, my money's not going to go anywhere. You can also think about who you partner with strategically. I don't know if you guys saw, but Raíces, the big immigrant rights group that's been on the border, they turned down a $250,000 donation from Salesforce because it works with border agency groups. It was kind of easy because they just raised $20 million, but still they got so much more money by turning this group down and being vocal about it. And we actually did that in the past at Atlas too. We turned down a $5,000 grant because we didn't like an organization's messaging about deferred action for childhood arrival. And then we told our donors we did that. We would say, we have a $5,000 gap because we didn't want to partner with a group that wasn't aligned with us. Help us fill it. Again, speak your truth about why you rock. Whew! We did it, guys. We went through it. More resources, my fundraising resource guide, documents and templates. We have the Giving Tuesday group. We're a resource with each other. Yay. There's an amazing book on the resource group called Managing to Change the World. If you're running a nonprofit or have any sort of organization, buy that book. It will change your life. Here's my email. We're done. Questions. Woo, we did it.
There was a question.
Yes.
If people have time to stick around, what are the signs that a board is working?
Oh, that they're writing you checks is one, that they're engaged, that they're coming to meetings, and that they're actually helping you. I have friends who run organizations and they basically run their entire board and they put in so much work. They create these board documents, all of that. But to me, that feels more like groveling than greenlighting. You want to help empower them to actually work and do things for your organization rather than keep on asking them. So if you have board members that aren't showing up, if you have board members that aren't writing checks, that's not working. If you have board members that are inviting their friends, that are engaging, that is working. There's an article in the document resource list called, I think it's called How to Get Rid of Bad Board Members, which is very useful. Other questions? I'm going to just, there's only 6 of us, so I'm just unmuting people. Hello, we did it. Good.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was incredible, Lauren.
Yay.
Yeah, this was great.
Great. Love you all. Yay. If somebody says, oh, it would be helpful for me if you can stick on for 2 more minutes, but you don't have to. What was the biggest thing you learned or the biggest takeaway you're going to walk away with? That's just helpful for me to know for when I do this in the future, what I should focus on.
I think you're particularly good at the flow.
Okay.
And at explaining how, like, everyone always says the ask is important.
Right.
But I really appreciated listening for let me know what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And like knowing where to put different spaces, like when not to do a gala, obviously if you're not going to make a profit, but you're very good at explaining the flow of how a lot of these different components ideally relate to each other. That was very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Secret, this was my very first time ever doing this presentation virtually. So the feedback's really helpful. If anybody else wants to share, and you can just like, what was the most useful? That's really helpful for me.
I think, oh, go for it.
I really loved hearing about the different kinds of boards, how they could work together.
Okay.
But I will say for each slide, there was action to do. I mean, every time you went to the next slide, I was clear, and I remember even now how to handle the different, I guess, antenna of fundraising.
Great. Yay. I'm really glad to hear that, because I really try to pride myself. When I worked with consultants in the past, there'd be a lot of talking and I'd be like, okay, but what do I do? And so I'm really glad that people feel like they have action.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I think what was really helpful too was that you were putting things into actual words and quotes, and saying like, oh, you should get this message across, but you actually said how precisely to get that message across, like in an actual like day-to-day example, which I thought was super helpful.
Great. Thanks, Vanessa.
Yay.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody have great days. You have my email.
Do we have access to this PowerPoint somewhere?
I can share it, right,
Okay.
Hannah?
That's
I
just,
can email it. I'll email it.
Yeah. And
Um,
also, this whole call is going to be recorded, and then you can reference it later.
okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Go
Thank
change the
you.
world. Raise lots of money. Do your operas. Do your new nonprofits. Help kids with autism. Do the things. You got it. Yay.
Woo.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.